Before it became a hub for immigrants, Sweden had a reputation as one of the best places to live. It was peaceful, well-developed, wealthy, and offered a great quality of life. Well, it's sad how it has gone from being one of the safest countries on the planet to a country that is associated with multiple gun deaths. Now, being associated with a high rate of gun deaths is just too bad for Sweden, but it gets worse. Hospital waiting times are the worst they have ever been. That's not all. The quality of education has reduced significantly. Sweden perhaps is now a shadow of its former self. A lot has gone wrong in the last couple of years, and it appears the Swedes now have to find a way to live with their new reality. But one thing they will not be settling into is a life of violence and crime. You see, the Swedes are peace-loving people, and they just are unwilling to live a life that involves constantly looking over their shoulders. There is currently a spread of violence around Sweden, and things have become so bad the country has put plans in place to release its armed forces into the streets. This should go a long way in dealing with the violence that has almost become a way of life. In the last few years, Sweden might not have been synonymous with violence in Europe. However, this is the first time that this is happening. According to Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson, Sweden has never seen anything like this before. No other country in Europe is seeing anything like this. Not many people outside of Sweden understand what is happening, and that Sweden is now really unsafe. However, it is quite common knowledge in Sweden that this violence can be traced to personal vendettas and gang wars. Also, it turns out numerous young people in Sweden are available, so they can be easily used to carry out violent crimes. At this point, you probably think the available young people are Swedes, but the fact is, these young folks who are deep into crimes are not Swedes. They are immigrants from the Middle East and Africa. Foreigners in Sweden have messed up the security system in ways that you might never understand. Some of the big names in notorious gangs are immigrants from Iraq, Syria, and Somalia, and this will go on if nothing gets done. Sweden opening its arms to people of other nationalities might seem bad right now, but it is not all shades of wrong, and it is not the only country that does this. Several rich countries across the globe are multinational. This is only possible because of migration. Well, like other countries in the world, migration is a thing, but while these countries seem to have gotten it right, things have gone left for Sweden. This raises questions about what other countries did right that Sweden is getting wrong. We will find out how Sweden made the wrong political decisions and how it has been affected lately. But that's not the first thing we will cover in this video. Before we go on, kindly like and share this video. Also, subscribe to this channel to see more videos like this. Before the Second World War, Sweden was homogeneous both linguistically and culturally. This was not because it wasn't open to immigrants, but because it had to deal with very few immigrants. Originally, the immigrants to Sweden were from Denmark, Germany, and Norway. Also, there were an average of 6,000 people annually. Unfortunately, things are not the same. After the Second World War, Sweden opened its borders to refugees. These immigrants were from outside Europe and were culturally different. In addition to the sharp difference between the culture in Sweden and other cultures of wherever these immigrants were from, based on its population, Sweden was one of the countries in Europe with the highest number of immigrants. Before immigration, Sweden wasn't a country with a sharp population growth. However, with its doors open to people from outside Europe, its population increased by more than 1% annually. Now, the increase in Sweden's population looks great on the surface. You'll be tempted to assume it is saving the country from the problem of an aging population that is prevalent in Europe. Well, the fact that the population in Europe is aging might not seem so significant, but it is a big deal, as fewer people have to do the work of many. That's not all. The smaller young population has to support the larger aging population. Additionally, as people grow older, their health needs increase and get increasingly complex. That is one thing that Europe is dealing with. So, to keep their countries running, European states have opened their borders to immigrants. This strategy has worked in other European countries because it attracted a working-class population that can work. Sadly, this is not the same with Sweden. Other countries in Europe that are multicultural seem to be doing better than Sweden. While there might be lots of reasons for this, one reason Sweden doesn't seem to be doing great as a multicultural country is that it wasn't exactly designed to function like this. Due to how Sweden attracts immigrants, it currently has a population of young people who do not work. This is not because there are no jobs, but because the immigrants can't work. You see, unlike other European countries that attracted immigrants based on how they could help the economy, Sweden attracted immigrants who were simply refugees. Now, instead of coming to take up available jobs, this set of people depend on the government for handouts. Before the Second World War, Sweden didn't have a problem with immigrants, as they were from countries with similar cultures and languages. That's not all. The available jobs at the time were quite straightforward and repetitive, so virtually everyone could do them. Well, things are very different in the labor market today. The jobs are not so simple. They require some experience and a level of education. Sadly, lots of immigrants to Sweden do not qualify for these jobs. Before opening its doors to migrants from the Middle East and Africa, Sweden had a reputation as a socially cohesive country. However, it no longer has this social cohesion. Immigrants that came to Sweden in the past were employable, so they got integrated into the society not long after they arrived. Unfortunately, we can't say the same about immigrants from outside Europe. Due to the cultural and linguistic barrier, lots of immigrants from the Middle East and Africa are unable to fit in. Of course, no one stays on their own after being unable to fit into society. Usually, these immigrants who cannot fit into society because of linguistic, cultural, or educational reasons end up in gangs. This is because the gangs are the only organizations that can absorb them. If you've always wondered why it is easy for criminal gangs to recruit young immigrants, the fact that these young people do not fit into the regular society and are marginalized is enough reason. The ease with which people get recruited into gangs in Sweden makes these gangs powerful. Also, it significantly increases violent crime in this country. Unfortunately, these crimes are really only associated with migrant communities. It is easy to assume Sweden has no control over the number of immigrants that find their way into its territory. But that's not the case. Based on Sweden's geographic location, it can control the number of refugees going through its borders. Unlike its neighbors Norway and Finland, which do not leave the doors open for refugees to arrive from war, Sweden has lots of people going through its borders because that's what it wants. You see, there are no rules that mandate Sweden to offer refugees permanent residency. However, it has decided to give these asylum seekers permanent residency. Its reason for doing this is primarily humanitarian. One could argue that Sweden is home to numerous refugees because its borders are porous. But this is not the case. Unlike countries like Greece, Italy, Spain, and the United States, which have borders that are difficult to man, Sweden's borders are not so difficult to man, so whatever goes through its borders is what it allows. Since Sweden can keep its borders closed, the reason they are open is purely political. You see, it is not the only country that has its borders open. Canada and Australia also do. These countries are open to immigrants, running into tens of thousands. But unlike Sweden, which is open to immigrants for political reasons, Australia and Canada are open to immigrants to meet their labor needs. As much as Canada and Australia are doing well with immigration primarily because they open their borders to people based on employment needs, there are other reasons they have made a success out of immigration. You see, getting permanent residency in countries like Australia and Canada is not as easy as doing so in Sweden. It takes a couple of years for immigrants to be granted permanent residency in Australia. Those who come into the country through the education path must be finished with their payments. Additionally, they have to take care of their health insurance before they are eligible to apply for private residency. That's not all. They should be able to prove that they are qualified to enter the labor market and should be fluent in the language of communication. When immigrants have to prove they deserve to live in a country, it goes far to demonstrate that they have what it takes to contribute positively to the economy of their host country. Sweden could have been successful with its immigration if it had gone Canada's route. Sadly, its immigration policy is too porous. Due to this policy, a good number of unskilled immigrants get to become citizens. Now these folks do not add anything to the economy. they only take from it. Another thing wrong with Sweden's immigration policy is instead of attracting immigrants who are interested in getting jobs, it only attracts those who seem keen on living off stipends from the government. Sweden is currently looking to tighten its border and reduce the movement of immigrants. Already, policies are being put in place to this effect. Sadly, it appears to have left its borders open to immigrants for too long, and it might have to put up with the consequences of its actions for a long time. Right now, we can only hope Sweden gets things right with its immigration policies and significantly reduces the level of crime committed in its communities. But time will tell if things will change for the better. That's all we have for you in this video. Thanks for going all the way. Before moving on, kindly subscribe to this channel if you have yet to do so. See you in the next video.